We would all like the higher powers to answer our prayers and speak to us. In reality, this is exactly what happens. However, not everyone knows how to hear these messages, as most are too preoccupied with themselves and their own ego. But since you have found this video, it means you are ready to learn the truth that will change your life once and for all. For he who learns to hear the voice of God within himself becomes truly chosen. First, consider this. If God truly wanted to address you, how would he do it? Surely it would not be through miracles that defy the laws of nature, nor through thunder and lightning from the heavens, nor through signs of fire. The Lord would choose a path much closer and quieter, namely, your own mind. It is there, where the simplest and seemingly most insignificant thoughts are born, that God begins to speak in the language of inner revelation. Among the many voices in a person's head, there is one that can be called special. It is not dictated by the ego, nor is it bound to worldly desires. This voice stems from the deepest layer of the soul, from the place where a human being touches the divine source. Yet, modern man has forgotten how to listen to it. He has grown too accustomed to conducting a monologue with himself, rather than a dialogue with the heavens. We seek God outwardly, in temples, in rituals, in memorized prayers. We lift our words to the sky, forgetting that sometimes the answer resonates from within, in the form of quiet intuition or an unexpected thought. More often than not, we dismiss these as something unimportant, but in truth, the Almighty is capable of speaking to you through your own consciousness. Therefore, right now, stop ignoring Him to become truly chosen. Right now, learn to listen to God not with your ears, but with your heart. Learn to perceive His messages not with your intellect, but with your soul. And then, your life will begin to transform. Then, all the strange coincidences in your destiny will find their true meaning. Chosen ones. Suffering will turn into a lesson, and silence into the language through which God speaks to you. Listen not to the noise of the outside world, but to the inner whisper that you may have ignored for so long. For this is precisely what makes you a truly chosen person. Begin with this very video. Try to hear as deeply as possible what is being said. Such things do not come by chance. They are never mere coincidences. This is another attempt by God to tell His chosen ones something important, in the hope that you will finally hear Him. Perhaps today, for the first time, you will truly recognize the voice of God amidst the familiar bustle of life. If this is so, write the word yes in the comments to seal within your subconscious the energy that came to you with this message, so that the Lord may see that you have accepted the grace of being a chosen person. And we shall continue. Has it ever happened to you that while sitting in silence, thinking of nothing, an elusive thought suddenly appears? It feels as if it isn't yours, yet it is so clear that it makes you freeze, and sometimes even move to tears or an exclamation of Eureka. This might be just a thought, or it might be a signal to act, to call someone, to forgive someone, or conversely, to ask for forgiveness. There are countless possibilities. This sudden thought does not demand or command. It simply passes through your consciousness like a light breath of wind, leaving behind a sense of stillness and peace. In such moments, it feels as if someone is speaking without words. This is the voice of the soul, the voice of the chosen. It is the moment when the deepest essence of a human being seeks to reach their conscious mind. This is because within every person lives a divine spark connected to the entire world. Religions call it God, psychologists call it the center of the soul, but the chosen call it the inner sun. We are accustomed to thinking that we control our thoughts, but in reality, we do not even perceive them. Thus, it is they that govern our lives, often shaping our destiny into something we do not desire. The task of the chosen one is to bring awareness into this process. Not all thoughts are born of logic. Some emerge from the depths, from the space where the collective memory of humanity is stored, where all souls intersect, and where God speaks to us across time and space. Very often, we perceive this voice as intuition, and in the chosen ones, it is particularly refined. Recall how many times you felt that something was clearly wrong, and it proved to be true. How many times did an inner feeling whisper to you, "Do not do this"? And if you listened, you avoided misfortune. Such intuition is the seal of the chosen one. A human being is not separate from the world, but is woven into a single spiritual flow, where thoughts, symbols, and emotions are interconnected. When you become still, you tune into this flow like a radio receiver. The signal already exists. You only need to catch the frequency of God. This happens only when you stop over-controlling everything and simply allow yourself to be. Simply be chosen. And then, in the silence, you will not only hear the voice of God, but realize that He has been speaking to you always. You simply could not clearly distinguish His messages because you were too caught up in the bustle. God does not seek the perfect or the ideal to speak with. He addresses those who dare to open themselves to the silence, that is, to the chosen ones. You do not need to become a monk or a hermit. A message from God can come to you at any moment, while you are working, washing dishes, walking down the street, or simply breathing. Sometimes a thought gently suggests, "Do not say this," or you will emotionally wound the person, or it quietly reminds you, "Forgive the offender, not for their sake, but for your own." Intuition whispers, "Do not go this way today." Each time a chosen one follows this call, they enter into a dialogue between their human ego and the divine essence within themselves. Imagine your mind as the sea. On the surface, there are waves, wind, and foam. These are thoughts, anxieties, and the vanity of the world. But if you dive deeper, you will discover stillness. There is no noise there, only the breath of the soul. It is in this depth that God speaks to His chosen ones. God does not need to shout to be heard. It is enough for Him that you simply fall silent. Therefore, the next time an unexpected thought suddenly stops you, filling you with a strange peace or quiet tears, do not be quick to dismiss it. Stop. Listen. Perhaps this is the voice of God that you have finally heard. Of course, you may ask, if God speaks to people, why do most of us never hear Him? What caused His voice to dissolve in the noise of the bustle? The matter is this. Every morning we wake up to the ringing of notifications, an avalanche of messages and reminders. Because of them, there is no room left within us for the most important thing, for the voice of the soul, for the messages of God. The tragedy is that people will do anything, commit any folly, just to avoid meeting their own soul. But the chosen one never does this. He honors the silence. Perhaps the most frightening thing is not that God is silent, but that we are no longer still enough to hear Him. The Lord has not ceased speaking for a single moment, but the mind of modern man has forgotten how to listen to anything other than senseless noise, both within and without. Furthermore, when you are too busy being who others want you to be, you lose the ability to hear the one who speaks inside you, which is God. But the chosen one always remains themselves. There is a brief parable about a woman who came to a priest and said, "I pray constantly, but God does not answer me." He smiled and asked, "Have you ever been still enough for Him to speak?" This is the entire essence. We talk too much and then complain that we do not hear God. But how can we hear Him if we do not give His voice even a chance to emerge through the torrent of internal and external sounds? God is always speaking, but we are not always ready to listen. A connection with the divine is born not in rituals or temples, but at the moment a person stops and, for the first time in a long while, speaks with their own soul. Silence is God's favorite language. He does not need our proofs, explanations, or long prayers. He needs only one thing, for us to be present, and then we shall see that He always abides within us. To hear the voice of God and become truly chosen, start small. 5 minutes in the morning. No phone, no music, no rush. Simply close your eyes and ask, "Lord, what do you want me to understand today as a person chosen by you?" Perhaps the answer will not come immediately. But if you are patient, at some point a thought will arrive. and you will realize it is not your own. This is the quiet response of heaven to the call of the chosen. But be careful not to confuse your human thoughts with a divine message. The difference between the voice of God and the voice of the ego is that one brings peace, while the other brings anxiety. One opens the heart, the other locks it in fear and control. The voice of the ego almost always sounds first. It is loud, logical, and persuasive. It says, "Be on your guard and trust no one. If you make a mistake, everyone will judge you." The voice of the soul comes later. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a breath. And it says, "Do what is right, even if no one is watching." You can distinguish these voices not by logic, but by a sensation in the body. When the ego speaks, the body constricts. Breathing becomes shallow, the chest feels heavy, and tension arises as if you are preparing for defense. But when the soul speaks, the heart opens, breathing becomes soft, and a warm wave passes through the body like a thin beam of light. Chosen ones, remember that the ego knows how to counterfeit the voice of God. It makes us believe we are driven by divine will, while in reality, we are merely justifying our own desires and fears. But the true voice of God never demands or hurries. It does not pressure. It always brings peace, even if its words are difficult. Distinguishing the voice of God from the voice of the ego is the most vital test of human life. The ego can make you think you are an enlightened person, while you are actually driven by a mere desire to seem significant. But the voice of God does not make you proud, it makes you calm. It does not exalt, it liberates. God does not always speak to the chosen in words, for words are the language of the mind. God more often speaks through symbols, coincidences, and events that appear accidental but carry profound meaning. This is called synchronicity, or meaningful coincidence, when external events perfectly reflect the internal state of the soul. God communicates with us not so much through sound as through meaning. A recurring dream, or number. A line from a song that plays exactly at the moment of doubt. All these are the whispers of God. Synchronicity is not a miracle. It is a sign where the invisible becomes visible to the chosen ones. Recall, has this ever happened to you? You are tormented by a choice, and suddenly a phrase flashes in your mind, or words play on the radio that seem addressed personally to you. Synchronicity is an omnipresent reality for those who have eyes to see. Chosen ones notice such coincidences more often than others, not because they simply believe in miracles, but because they have awakened. They observe, feel, and see the threads of meaning woven into an ordinary day. In such moments, the internal and external worlds converge at a single point, and the boundary between spirit and matter vanishes. When we are deaf to these symbols, life appears chaotic and meaningless. When you notice recurring signs, do not dismiss them. Instead, ask yourself what they mean for you personally. Of course, not every coincidence is the voice of God, but His voice always arrives through synchronicity, precisely, on time, and at the depth for which your soul is ready. Undoubtedly, there are periods when you do not hear God in prayers, nor see Him in signs or dreams. There is only silence and emptiness. You wake up without strength, and what once brought joy suddenly loses its flavor. It feels as if you are falling apart. But perhaps it is at this very moment that God speaks not with words, but by turning off everything superfluous in your life. He is not taking away your joy. He is removing what prevented you from hearing Him. This is the pain of awakening. When the soul prepares to move to a new level of awareness, it breaks down the old constructs, beliefs, roles, and masks you have clung to for so long. Just as a seed must crack to sprout, a person must pass through pain for a new consciousness to be born within them. Pain is not a punishment, but a signal of a new birth. It cleanses, making room for the presence of God. What seems like the end is only the beginning of a deeper life. God does not punish, He liberates. And sometimes, liberation begins with destruction. Every spiritual crisis is a call from the subconscious, an opportunity to reconnect with the divine center. Pain does not destroy the soul, it destroys the ego. When the ego cracks, light penetrates that fissure, and suddenly, you hear the true voice of God. Modern science suggests that after severe loss or crisis, the brain rewires its neural networks. As a result, a person becomes more mindful and wise. Pain, like fire, cleanses and tempers the metal. By passing through trials, the soul becomes stronger. God does not want you to suffer, but sometimes it is only through this that you begin to hear Him. If you are in pain today, do not be quick to think you have lost everything. Perhaps you are simply being taught to hear with your heart. Let every crack become a window through which a new light enters your destiny. Let your wounds turn into portals through which God speaks. The Almighty speaks not only in sacred moments, in dreams, or rare coincidences. He speaks through the very fabric of your life, through your actions and your choices.